Hello, everyone, and welcome to Guess What with Roger and Anunsen. This is part of our Dobara Wellbeing Program, and essentially the idea behind today's show is that it's a surprise based on neuroscience, and it's about cognitive interventions which are designed to be short-term activities that give Neuro-Squirts. Before we start, I'm going to take this time to basically explain to everyone, because a lot of people have joined our virtual wellbeing program this year, and they weren't there last year at the inception of it. And I wanted to give everyone an idea about how all of this came about. So last year, when the lockdown happened, I was with my mother, and we got together and created the Dobara virtual wellbeing program. And one of the reasons why it has been so successful, and one of the reasons why we've done it so enthusiastically, has been Roger, because he has basically been our voice of science and our intellectual backing when it came to our ideas. And when we were like, okay, we know it's a good idea, but we're unable to really kind of like delve into why, we would then refer to Roger. And Roger would say, oh, there's definitely science behind this. There's a reason why you should be doing this activity, because it's brain healthy for this and this and this reason. And so that gave us a lot of strength to continue and to go ahead and to keep building. I think one of the first reasons we reached out to Roger was for public speaking, because we were invited to do our very first Zoom webinar in 2020, and neither of us had any experience using Zoom at that time. And so we reached out to Roger because he's a professor, and I think at that time his entire college had gone online on Zoom. And not only that, he's done TED Talks, and his entire, he's done big presentations. He's a fabulous public speaker, and he has podcasts, and basically he really knows how to do this well. And he helped us out in such a big way. And honestly, Roger, we wouldn't have been able to do any of this without you. So thank you so much for being our strength, for being our support, and for being our biggest cheerleader.
Now I'm going to give some cheers to you and everyone from Dobara. The reason this works is because it is healthy. It gives people joy. Now, anytime you feel good, and all you have to do is look at one part of one day, every week, every month, Dobara has the ability to connect people. And when you feel good, that means your brain is, are you ready? Popping out neuro-squirts of chemicals that are good for your health, good for your well-being, and really good for your brain's future. Someone who doesn't connect with other people, laugh on Monday, talk about tasty foods on Tuesday, be well on Wednesday. If you don't have those things to look forward to, your brain, in a sense, atrophies, slows down, and simply goes into a glide. The engines sort of turn off. The opposite happens when Sameen, Mateen, and all of the volunteers get together and say, let's do something that is going to take us on a journey with each other. So it's the connections. So what we're going to do today is something I've really been waiting to test. And that's, can you have something that's every once in a while that's a surprise based on neuroscience? And what we're going to do today is to talk about cognitive interventions that are designed to be activities that aren't lasting for an hour or 2 hours, but a few minutes here, 3 minutes there, 5 minutes here, even a smidgen counts. I can't see everyone, but I may get you all together in the gallery and ask you, how many of you know what a smidgen is? A smidgen, in my definition, is a tiny, tiny amount of positive brain activity that makes you a tiny bit better. Does it count? Yes, it does. And the TED Talk that I hope all of you will take time to listen to is my version of why a smidgen at a time, every day, and in Dobara's situation, every hour of every day, you can come online and get smidgen after smidgen of good brain squirts. They're called Neuro-Squirts. Well, tonight, what we're going to do, tonight in my world, in the morning, we're going to go through some of the things that I created 2 decades ago and other people created in what we call cognitive activity design. We design things that don't spend time with people, but we invest time. Because coming out of this COVID era, this COVID pandemic, I think we're going to revalue time. And tonight's going to be, or this morning is going to be an example. We can either waste time, we can spend time, but what I hope we're going to do is have us all invest time in learning that when you have an activity that tickles your brain, that makes you laugh, makes you think, those are the investments in your brain's future. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share if we can. Do I have the ability, Samin, to screen share?
I have to give you the ability. Sorry, Roger.
You give me that ability or else I'm going to sign off.
Yeah, don't be angry, but my Zoom is doing some weird stuff.
Okay. And for those of you who haven't seen a screen share, it's my screen. And what I'll be putting up is the PowerPoint slides. And if they work, they'll be with me. I'll be on one side of the screen. They'll be on the other. There are other times that I'll have that screen share turned off because I want to show you some things close up and work with you. We promised that this would be interactive, and technically, even though you may not be doing anything, your brain is doing something. It's listening to me. It'll be seeing the slides. It'll be actively trying to figure out what is this? And that's why the guess what works. Let me try to screen share now. Looks like I don't have permission just yet. Hey, if we lost Samin, we can talk amongst ourselves about how much she means to Dobara. I'm going to tell you a quick story while we get that. Intel is a big computer operator. They make the chips for around the world. And in 2004, I was invited to do a keynote at their brand new auditorium at their home center, which is here in Oregon. And they had this beautiful 200-seat auditorium with stadium seating, the latest in gadgets. And I brought my PowerPoint plug-in, and they had the thumb drive, and they put it in, and they were just so excited because this was the first big day of training. And they had lectures, and I opened up that morning of a full day of lectures, and I waited for them to get ready. And about 1 minute before we're ready to start, I was told that we are not going to be able to start on time because they couldn't get the PowerPoint running. So at that, and this is Intel, which is a giant. And here were these guys. They said, but it'll just be a few minutes. So we'll just let everybody get settled. At about 4 minutes after, they came up and said, we may have to go a little farther. Can you, we'll introduce you and, can you? And I said, just introduce me. I'll talk to him. So we watched the clock tick as I, in a sense, goofed around with them. I told them neuroscience stories. I even told a couple of jokes. We were having a good time talking. And at 20 minutes after, this was going to be a 90-minute lecture. At 20 minutes after, they came up and tapped me on the shoulder and told me they're going to have to reschedule me for the afternoon in hopes that they could get the PowerPoint going. I knew I couldn't be there in the afternoon and whispered to them, I can't do that. I can't be there. they said, we promise we'll bring you back. And I said, the audience couldn't hear what we were talking about. At that point, I told them, let me do something before we dismiss the audience. I turned to the audience and the microphones worked fine, but the screen had nothing on it. And these guys were now sweating bullets. And I said, they've just told me that they have just a tiny problem with the PowerPoint and it may take a while. And if they don't get it fixed, we may have to postpone this. So we're going to vote. We can either postpone this and I'll come back on another day, or we'll pretend they never invented PowerPoints and we'll just keep talking. They didn't vote. They started applauding. So at that point, I knew that even if Zoom fails or the internet fails, as long as people can get together, we can still give a lecture. So what I'm going to do is find out if Samin is still here.
Yeah, hi Roger, I'm back. I switched off my video because I think my internet is sketchy in the
Well,
village.
then let's not do that. I can do this with zero.
No. So I have given you co-hosting ability, which means you can share screen because I'm assuming your internet is not as sketchy as mine.
Okay, let me see what I can do here.
Sorry about that. I was worried I lost you all for a second.
Okay, what do you see? Make sure that we can.
Right now, nothing.
Nothing. My internet in Jefferson, Oregon, which is south of Portland, is also sketchy and it may be slow. And remember, we only have your brains until about 45 minutes from now. So I need to make sure that we get to use them.
Roger, we can see the guess what invitation.
Okay, let's get moving here. Tell me when you see the two books that I want to talk about for a minute.
We can see.
Yes, we can.
Okay, these are the two college textbooks. One is Strong Brains, Sharp Minds. That's a textbook that is available and we update it. That's the one we use in the Aging Mind class. But today, we're going to be talking about the other class that just concluded for this year. And it's when students come in wanting to design activities for older people, and they have to be based on brain science studies. They have to know that what they're doing makes a difference. And that's why Dobara has adopted a lot of these little things that make a difference. So we're going to talk about cognitive activity design, but we're also going to have a chance to find out what's on your mind. We want to know if you have questions, but we're going to have you hold those until we get through some of the slides. And then I want to make sure we have time to have Joe come in and do a real surprise for some of you. And maybe others might have heard about his projects that have to do with iconic photographs. So let me first ask you if you can see that image on the screen and a question for you. Can you see it yet?
Both we can see. Both.
Okay.
Woman and older woman.
Do you see a younger woman or do you see an older woman?
Both.
Shall I say something?
I can see both.
We can see both.
Shall I intervene?
Yes, please go ahead.
Those who have read Stephen Covey will be able to make it, not others.
Seven effective habits.
Yes,
Yes.
it's a wonderful
This photograph came from Germany in the 1800s. It's a picture of a drawing, and it actually is an older woman and a younger woman, and it's been copied time and time again. But the point of this is that you cannot see both of them. You think you can, and some people, when they first look at it, will see a younger woman, and then they'll say, no, I don't see it. And then they say suddenly, oh, now I can see it. And it's important to know that your brain worked to be able to see one and then the other, and then back and forth. And it wasn't until about 20 years ago when they put brain scans on people's brains that when people claim they can see both of them, that they could prove without any subjective questions of what do you see, that the brain switches very quickly, but still switches from one thing to the other, back and forth. Multitasking is something we want to make sure that as you age, you understand the more you think you can do two things at once, the less you know about brain science, because it's been proven that when you try to do two things at once, you don't do either one as well as you could concentrating on one and then concentrating on the other. This is the book that I want to mention over and again when it comes to keeping your brain sharp with little interventions.
Naziru.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm
Did you-
just going to mute everyone, Roger. Just
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if you do have a question, make sure that you hold that and then we'll get to it. Samina, we're ready?
We're ready.
The reason this is so important that when Jerome Kagan from Harvard wrote this book, it was primarily about younger brains. He's one of the experts in the history of science on how developing minds in elementary schools and in higher education, that when the brain of a learning student tries to encode information and retain it, unless you have some surprises that keeps the brain alert, something they can't predict, their brain's structures are weak. But when you can have an excitement to it, something that can't be predicted, the science shows that the brain will pay attention. And that's what we try to do when we train activity directors and activity professionals, that when you're working with people who are over the age of 50, and let me stop there. Is anybody over the age of 50 in this group? Almost all of us raise our hands, maybe not Samin. But when you're over 50 and you think that you don't want to be surprised, pleasantly surprised, you have to understand that the fact that you can't predict something is how the brain increases its ability to pay attention to things. So we'll be using that on this model. Here are two of my favorite pictures. That's me in both of those pictures. These are examples of surprise. The one on the left side is me when I was an activity director, and I wanted to shake up the dining room when I first went to work there. I was the activity director. Most of the people didn't know me very well, but I wanted to find a way that they would never be certain what might happen when I was around. So I collaborated with one of my staff members and said, as I'm cutting the pies that we're serving for this special event called Pie-a-thon, we had 10 different kinds of pies. She walked up behind me with a whipped cream pie and snuck up behind me. I knew she was coming. My goal was to have everybody there watch me get a pie in the face, and oh, did it work. From that point on, for the next 3.5 years during our clinical trials, they never could quite figure out what was going to happen next. And that's one of the secrets of being a professional who's supposed to be delivering brain health information or brain health activities. Now, the one on the right, I'm going to hold. That was taken when I was giving a speech at a community in their dining room. And it has to do with something I'm going to test this group on. So you see the pose that I've got there? I'm imitating an animal, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Now, before I go further, I want to ask everybody if you have a guess as to how many things your brain can hold in its brain in short-term memory at any one moment in time. How many? Now, don't tell me your guesses just yet, but think about how many you can hold in trying to remember things. Here's the number. George Miller, who is a young professor at Princeton, he came up with a number that he claimed was the human limit of things that you can remember at any one time. And that number is 7, plus or minus 2. So by having 7 things you can remember, and on a good day, you can remember 9. And on a day that you're having a cold, or you just don't feel good, or you didn't get a good night's sleep, the human brain, as his study showed, can still remember 5 things. So between 5 and 9, or as he called it, a magic number of 7 plus or minus 2. So here's what I'm going to do. Can everyone hear me? Can we unmute everyone?
Sure.
This is a cognitive intervention that we designed, and we designed it to prove to people that no matter how much you think you can remember an unlimited number or quite a few, the human brain can only remember 7 plus or minus 2. So I'm going to give you 5 numbers to remember, and I'm not going to give you enough time to write them down or think about them. I'll simply say them, and because we're in a group, I'll swing my hand here if I can do this and try to keep track of the numbers. And maybe it won't work with streaming video, but we'll give it a try. Here are the numbers I want you to try to remember, and then echo them back to me. Everyone say yes when I ask you, are you ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. 4, 8, 2, 7, 1.
4,
8,
7,
7, 2, 1.
4, 8,
2, 7, 1.
28. 28.
Okay. Now, because everyone has different bandwidths, and this is the first time I've ever tried this, let's go ahead and mute everyone. And what I'll do is I'll still use my voice, which isn't blurred, and I'll try not to say the numbers again, but let's try it again. You say it to yourself after I give you the numbers. 8, 3, 5, 2, 1. Go.
8, 3,
8,
8, 3, 5, 2, 1.
1.
Now let's try 6 numbers. 4, 8, 7, 3, 2, 1.
4, 8, 7, 2, 1.
7, 3, 2, 1.
Now we're going to go 7 numbers. 7, 5, 2, 8, 4, 6, 3. Go.
7, 5,
4, 6, 3.
4, 6,
Okay.
3.
Okay, it's getting a little bit harder, isn't it? Here we go. Now we're going to do 8 numbers. 4, 8, 1, 7, 6, 5, 9, 3.
4, 8,
1, 7, 9, 3.
6, 5, 9, 3.
You're doing very well. Let's try for 9. Are you ready?
Oh,
Yeah.
Wait a second. I heard someone say, oh no. When I'm with an auditorium and we can have the entire group do this, it's always at 8 or 9 that someone says, they shake their head and say, oh no. I use that as a teaching point to point out that when someone doesn't think they can, they give their brain permission to fail. So what we want to do is we're going to do 8 again, and then we're going to go right into 9, and then we might even try to break the record and say we'll do 10. So this is 8 numbers, 8 numbers.
8 numbers.
Okay, here we go. 2, 8, 4, 7, 4, 3, 6, 5.
2,
Go.
8,
7, 6, 3, 5. 7, 6, 3, 5.
Now we're going to try 9. 6, 4, 3, 8, 7, 2, 9, 4, 1. Go.
6,
6, 4, 7, 3, 8, 7, 2, 4, 9, 7, 2, 9, 4, 1.
Oh,
4, 1.
excellent, excellent. What George Miller found when he used this with young people, with older people, with Women with men, everyone got to 5. Almost everyone got to 7, not as many to 8. A few every time got to 9, but not the same people, and nobody got to 10. The way we explain this, okay, we're done with that little exercise. Let's mute. And let me explain why this is important. When you walk into a room and you talk to somebody and say hello, and then they start telling you a story, and then you say goodbye, and then you turn to walk on and say, what was I doing here? Has anybody walked into a room and forgot what they went in for? It's almost never a sign of dementia. It's a sign that something interrupted your thinking. That person said hi. You said, how's the weather? Every time something takes your mind away from those 7 things, plus or minus 2, it knocks one of them off of your short-term memory shelf. And you can't predict which one. But a way that you can remember is to take a step back, go to where you came in the room. It's still in your brain. You just have to have confidence that it'll come back to you. All right. Because I want to work with you for about another half hour, I'm going to introduce you to one of the best cognitive interventions that we came up with. And this is based upon historical records of what you call a group of animals. And as soon as we get done here, I'm going to ask Joe to give us a break to take a break and give you one of the best cognitive interventions that we've ever seen. But at this point, I'm going to ask you a question, and that is, what do you call a group of lions? Does anybody know? It's a pride of lions, a pride. And most people we found know what a pride of lions is. But what do you call a group of geese?
Gaggle.
It's not a flock. It's a gaggle of geese. And what do you call a group of leopards?
I know this
Here's
one.
a hint. Here's a hint. It's not a pride of leopards.
Is it a leap of leopards?
It's a leap of leopards. It's a leap. Now, if you didn't know that that was a leap, then you just encoded a brand new memory. Can you remember it tomorrow? Maybe, maybe not. But if I pulled $1,000 American dollars out and said, I'll give this to you, if you can remember that a group of leopards is a leap, I'll bet you would remember it. Memory is something that can be stimulated. If you want to know, you have ways to do it. One is to be rewarded, and the other is to say it 3 times, a leap of leopards, or to see my hand go up like a leopard leaping. What do you call a group of raccoons? Now, if you didn't know this, and I tell you, and I ask you later today, you might remember that it's a mask of leopard, or a mask of raccoons. Now I'm going to move for sake of time, and someday I'll come back the next time we do this, and I'll tell you about a game that we invented called the Brain Rain game. But I want to tell you that Albert Einstein said that creativity is intelligence having fun. And my colleague, Joe from Milwaukee, has fun being creative, and he also has fun helping people. The name of his company is Photavia. Now say the word photo in your brain, photo, and then say the word aviation, like an airplane going through the sky, Photavia. So at this point, I'm going to see if we can get Joe to share his screen. I'll quit sharing mine and see if we can give Joe a chance to create a cognitive intervention designed to give your brain a quick workout and possibly a little joy.
Here we go. We'll give it a try.
Okay.
Is everybody there still?
Yep, we're here.
Okay, let's see if I can get this to work. See if you remember this. Can you hear it? That was brief, but I learned so much about India when we did this brief exercise. Oops, I'll turn that off. I think Roger will
Joe,
come back. Yes.
Joe, I saw some people typing in the names of these heroes from the World Cup victory. How many of you knew some of the history that Joe and his team put together about that cricket match? How many of you were alive at the time, and it was joy that you had at the time? And when you saw those images, that one image, and Joe's technique of looking closely at it and having information, what he did was to trigger your brain by sparking or digging down into what we call the golden mining. They're mining for your memories. And we found that when some city, or especially a whole nation, has an elevation of their excitement when they win a championship, especially one like that, the brains all over the country for that one day and for days after were healthier. And by having that feeling of elation or elevation, the hospitals, in studies in the last 20 years, when that happens, the hospitals have fewer people that are admitted, and those that are admitted get out quicker because they want to get home and enjoy. It floods the brain in a neural cascade every time that someone takes you back to those moments. And that cricket match that Joe and his team developed into a 2-minute journey, a time machine back to those moments, can have people be a smidgen or more than a few smidgens healthier. Joe, any comments that you've got about how you've used those within the Photavia model?
We've seen amazing results when we've tested it in front of people and or even in front of you folks. Dobara, we're very excited to work with you, and you know, I learn something every day from the things that we discover. And when I go back and look, we have over 136 of these developed right now at this point, and we're excited. We have another. I cross my fingers. I cross my little fingers here. I hope that we have another 30 done by the end of the month. So again, just every day watching folks react to it. watching the smiles, watching the head nods, and then getting the feedback and we start these intergenerational conversations all the time. So whether you're 15 or you're 50 or you're 100, there's a different story that you can relate to this. Like I wanted to say today, my daughter is going to be playing in a regional championship game. It's nothing like this, but it's very exciting for the community and for her team and families, of course. So I see this, and that's what I think of today. So always
terrific.
Pinging memories is wonderful.
It really is. And part of the beauty of that is that people shared that memory. So every time that someone wants to sit down and talk about it, if we had scans on the brains of people who watch these Fotavia 2 minutes where their brains will be healthier because the electrification causes those expression of those Neuro-Squirts that come out when you have those feelings of joy. And I see the pictures of Dobara from when you were in person, and I look forward to having more pictures of people who are communicating with each other by simply being together. And thank goodness we've got Zoom, because during this time period, we've learned that we can have a hybrid. We can do some live virtual, but we can also have that time together. Joe, anything else before we get back to some of the other cognitive activities?
No, I'm going to sit back and listen like everybody else and learn. Maybe take a nap because it's later than it is by you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. Keep going.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Forward, but here we go. We're going to do a little bit of who remembers what a group of leopards are called? Anybody got that one? Go ahead and unmute. Let's see if we can work with this.
Leap.
I'll leave. I saw Joe with that model leap. Okay, now all of you who know what a group of leopards are, surely you know what a group of flamingos is called, don't you? Now, if you don't know, then your brain has to work a little harder, but you have to have that puzzle part between, I know what a flamingo is, I even know how to spell it, but you don't know that it's called a stand. And that's what I was doing in that event. Some cameraman caught me standing on a chair when I said, a group of flamingos is called a stand.
Stand. Okay.
A stand.
Stand.
And
Okay.
here's a fun one. What do you call a group of butterflies? It's a flutter of butterflies.
Flutter.
Now, when you start asking yourself, well, where did these come from? I proudly tell you that when I invented this back in 2001 and developed it into a program, I wanted to have something that was real. I didn't want to make up something and have people think they should remember it. I did my homework, and when I found out that a group of giraffes is called a tower. A tower of giraffes. At that point, I knew I was on to something, because in 1451, there was a manuscript that's in a museum in England still, when the explorers came back from Africa with stories and drawings and pictures drawn of animals and told these tales. They apparently said they can't all be called herds or flocks or schools of fish.
Swarm.
Let's give them names. And that's where they came from. The Book of Edgerton was first, and a competing book that I found out about, the Book of St. Alban, was published in 1460. So both of those were combined into what's called the combination of names, the combination of names of groups of animals. So we adopted those, and it's important that you know that if you don't remember these, don't worry. But the next time someone asks you, it's in there somewhere that a group of butterflies is a flutter and a group of giraffes or a tower. last one in this segment, and that is, what is a group of hummingbirds called?
Song? No.
It's a, are you ready? It's a
Hummers.
shimmer. A
Oh,
shimmer.
shimmer.
A shimmer. Isn't that wonderful? Okay,
Shimmer.
I'm going to take a quick break here. If you have either a question or a comment on it, these simple cognitive activities or the guess what, then either raise your hand or give us your name.
Is there a way I can see everyone? I don't know.
Oh, I think if I unscreen share and we go to everyone, I can certainly stop sharing. And then let's go into gallery view.
Gallery view.
Okay.
Now we can see.
Now, what I'm going to ask is, does anyone have either a question or a comment so far? And then I'm going to wrap this up. But just raise your hand if you have a question or a comment, then we'll make sure everybody has. We got a couple. Samin?
Yeah, we have Dr. Pratap S. Reddy, who's raising his hand.
Okay.
I'm the founder chairman of Dhruva College of Management, the first of its kind in this country, not for profit. And I'm proud to say that Mateen Ansari was my student in JNT MBA. And I have no question, but I have to make a comment. This is a wonderful piece of lecture I ever heard in my 78 years of life. One of the best lectures I have listened to. Excellent.
I'm going to come back in the next 2 years, maybe even in the next 6 months, and propose that we get you involved with a project that I wasn't going to be talking about, but I'll give you a little hint. We've been working for 2.5 years in Oklahoma City on a 4-year project. So we're in year 3. Our goal, doctor, is to translate neuroscience into a plain English curriculum that can be understood by people who need to keep their own brains healthy. We beta tested it this year, 4.5 months worth of every other week, getting 2-hour lectures to groups in 2 states, and it succeeded. And on the 7th of July, we start the MindRamp Academy. It's a total of 10 lecture modules that are 2 hours apiece with a week in between. So covering everything we know, but we don't stop with, okay, that's the current state of brain science, because we found that knowing the science and telling you, here's the science, doesn't help you design. Here's the key: design your own brain health future. If you design your own plan and you're motivated to do the hard work that it takes to keep your brain healthy, your future brain will thank you. So we think we've got a plan that after about 10 weeks of the 19 weeks we're working with you, you will not only know the science, but we save the last third to help you design your own plan. What are you going to do? And that's the sustainability. So these are offered twice per year. And I would love to have some of the members of Dobara be seated in the classroom. It's all online, and it's going to be one that this group, I think, would really enjoy what we're doing to try to get something that really will be helping everyone. Our mission, in fact, as Joe knows, he's helping us with a number of things. The mission that I told Michael was that before we die, I want to say we helped educate the world. That's not too much, is it? On how the brain works, how it sometimes fails, but most importantly, that you're the one who has to do the work, because none of us are rich enough to outsource or pay somebody else to keep our brain healthy. You got to do it yourself. So doctor, I'm going to come to your door and I'm going to knock on your door and say, I want you to sign up for our class. Okay.
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Sure. So kindly, I will take your mail ID from Mateen.
Okay. I
I
will
want to
email
take-
you. Thank you.
I would like to take. I'll be in touch with you, and I'm blessed to have
Thank you.
attended this program. It's very,
Okay, well-
very interesting. Very,
Well,
very.
thank you. Are we still on screen share?
You start, yes. Yes.
Okay.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, what's on your mind? And I'm going to go to the next slide if I can do this. Okay, what do you call a group of raccoons? Who remembers? A mass. That's right.
Masks.
What do you call a group of giraffes? Come
Tower,
on.
tower,
Tower.
Tower. Yay.
tower.
Okay. What do you call a group of butterflies?
Flutter.
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 A flutter. That's right. What do you call a group of lizards? Come on. Come on. Now here's a point. Now this is an important point. When you're with someone in the next few weeks and they say to you, don't you remember? You know, there are some things you never knew in the first place. It's not dementia that you don't know what a group of lizards are called. But here's one of the best ones that I found. And a group of lizards, are you ready? Is called it's called a lounge of lizards.
Oh,
And that's exactly where it comes from.
Couch.
That's nice.
lounge
Okay,
of
what do you call this animal? What do you call this? Look closely. What do you call this animal?
It's the bird and a dog put together.
Looks like a dog.
A bird.
It's a
Bird and a
bird
dog.
What is this?
Sorry, I'm just going to mute.
Together. Lizard.
Okay,
and
let me-
lounge of-
let me point out to you that if we had scanners on all of your brains when I showed you that picture, even
It's
though
a
you
dog and a
knew it
bird.
was photoshopped, your brain would be a smidgen healthier because it surprised you. It surprised you for that nano moment. And that's why we say that if you have something that's novel, your brain will not atrophy. And if you don't have any novelty, if you don't have any surprises, if you can predict everything, your brain's mental structure starts coming apart. But the nice gift of having a human brain is that when you do get those surprises, something that you can smile at, the brain's mental structure gets stronger. That's called neuroplasticity. The brain can change itself for the better if you do the right thing. So that's going to end the talk that I've got. I've got a few more minutes here and I probably would like to go for 2 or 3 more hours, but I'm going to let Joe go to bed. And I do want to tell you one story before I leave about neuroplasticity and talk about one of the pioneers of brain science who will forever be remembered for what he and his wife did, but especially for what he did to help neuroscience understand the power of never giving up. So Samin, I'm going to go off the screen share and let's see if somebody has any final questions, and then I'll get ready to talk about one of my favorite pioneers.
Roger, I actually wanted to take this moment to kind of introduce you to our in-house cognitive activity designers. And the best thing is they probably don't know that that's what they're doing.
Okay.
We have Kamakshi Hatti, and I call her my Kamu auntie, and she's been hosting Wednesday Wellbeing once a month for the last 6 or 7 months for Dobara on Zoom. She's very Zoom savvy, and she hosts it for the full hour, and it's always full of fun.
Okay, raise your hand. Which one is it?
Do you see her, Kamakshi Hatti?
Oh, thank you. Very good. Okay, we have an entire team of cognitive activity designers just because you have a chance to get started. What you're doing is helping everyone, but you're helping yourself too, because you're doing that brain exercise. Okay, who else do we have?
Then we have Mamta Gupta, who's been doing this from before even like last year. She's been doing it in person as well. She's always volunteered her time and her skills for our daycare center, the senior residency. Yeah. So Mamta, and she did one on online as well.
Okay.
And then we have Pradeep Rao, who's our resident quiz master, who keeps us all on our toes.
Now, is that the one that does the jumble?
No, the jumble is Shekhar.
Mr. Chandrasekhar.
He's not here. He does like WhatsApp a lot more than.
Now I'm going to have to find out what the quizmaster does, because puzzles are so magnificent as long as you understand that the puzzle has to be not too hard and not too easy. And the other is that if you have the same puzzle that you do, keep doing it, but try a different quiz, a different type of puzzle. And that's just beautiful that you've got those. It's like you have a smorgasbord. You have all sorts of choices and you can sample them. And maybe that's why Samin and I are developing, guess what? So sometimes we'll have some special guests. Sometimes we'll have it in the morning. Sometimes we'll have it in the evening. But we'll try to do it always. Maybe we should try to do it always on Wellness Wednesday, Wellbeing Wednesday.
Yeah. So yeah, those are. I just wanted to introduce you to our Dobara cognitive activity designers.
Well, you know that when you saw the, just a minute, I shut my camera off accidentally. When you saw the poster on the WhatsApp, you saw at the bottom, it was the International Cognitive Activity Designers. We're trying to pull in people from the US and from other places around the world to be with us when we pull these off on a Wednesday. And what we'll do is we'll announce that we're having them and probably not even tell you who's going to be here. So part of it is that element of surprise and uncertainty. Anything else before I wind up with the with one of my favorite people involved? Now, if I can have everybody on speaker view instead of gallery view.
Yeah.
I want you to take a look at what's behind me on the screen here.
Oh, it's Christopher Reeves.
Superman.
Superman. You've got that. Okay. And I want to tell you about Christopher Reeves and his wife, Dana. And when we have all sorts of pioneers and great men and women in neuroscience history who are helping us be hopeful about tomorrow because of the discoveries that they've had. I've often described the dark ages of brain science being the 80s and 90s, the 1980s and 1990s. Can anybody remember that far back? They only knew 5% of what they know now. And part of it is because people in the field of research didn't give up, even though the science book said your brain can't rewire, you can't build up new neurons because the brain doesn't make new neurons and you can't rewire them. Well, Christopher Reeves is at the top of my list of a dozen people who 100 years from now will be remembered not for Superman and not for that tragic accident when he fell off of a horse and broke the wiring, broke the connection between his mind and his body. And when that happened, he was told by the best doctors in the world, first, he was lucky to be alive. Second, he was told that because he has the ability and the resources to stay healthy, he could live a long life and his brain wasn't damaged. He could think, but he couldn't send a signal to make his legs move, to make his arms move, because as clearly shown, there was a gap Here's his wiring going down. From that point on, no wiring caused any movement. Now, all of you, wiggle your right big toe. Wiggle your right big toe. That's part of your brain. Chris Reeves couldn't wiggle his toes, his hands, but he also had an idea that maybe this thing he just heard about called neuroplasticity that some people said was real, but it wasn't in any medical textbooks. The medical textbook said it was impossible for brains to rewire with an injury like he had. But he thought, if they're wrong, I better keep my arms, my legs, I better keep my joints, my muscles active just in case. So what he did was to create a place where he could go with help of physical therapists to keep his arms moving. They moved them. He even invented some machines that could move his arms in ways to stretch the muscles so they didn't atrophy, hoping for the day that he could walk. Now, one of the things that he also did was to not give up hope. Hold on.
Funny, we have people coming into the waiting room at this time.
I'm going to whisper. Can you hear me?
Well,
Yeah, I lost my voice. So what they did was to continue to hope that someday he'll be able to walk. This happened. It was written in his joint autobiography. His wife died a few years after he did. He died of nothing to do with his injury. But on a day that they were in their kitchen, and do you remember the chair he was in? He was in a mechanical chair, and at the time he couldn't drive it, but it was a big chair that had his arms up like this. And they were talking in the kitchen, and they were having quite a spirited discussion, as they called it, but their friends said it was more of an argument because they got into arguments at times. And what she did, she was looking at him, he was looking at her, talking. She said to him something, they never revealed what it was, and he angrily said, "Now watch my finger here, watch my finger." He angrily said, "I don't think you," and at the moment he said "you," looking at her, his finger pointed right at her. He stopped talking. She stopped talking. She stared at his finger. He stared at his finger. And she then said, "Did you do that on purpose?" And he angrily said, "Of course not." And she said, "Could you try to point at me again?" He pointed at her again and again and again. What happened was that part of his brain had connected. That was the first place that it connected. And what that did was to tell him it's working. It took years. And what was happening is, without any scans, because they weren't invented, so he didn't know, the expert didn't know, but his team of people who didn't give up had seen when that happened that he then started exercising more, and it didn't stop. Once that connection was there, it was like a railroad that finally builds the last spike. They don't quit building railroads. They build another railroad and another one. And what had happened was that he connected it so that before he died, he could gesture with his fingers. He could move his own cart around. He could make movements. He couldn't hold his own weight, but he could move because of something called neuroplasticity. And he said that the one thing in his life that he hopes he's remembered for, that I think he will be remembered for as long as people know about brain science, according to his statement at the time, was he wanted to be remembered as the person that eliminated from every medical dictionary in the world, he wanted to eliminate the word impossible. And because hope springs internal, we now know that people who have faith in themselves, that how do you know you can't unless you try? Those are the people that prevail. So Chris Reeves in my book is one of the top 12 pioneers in the history of brain science, and we can all thank him for inspiring us. So with that, I'm going to go drink some hot tea. Thank you all for bearing with this. And Samin, I've got to compliment your entire team for having such a great group that is going to elevate each other. So thank you all very much. Good night.
Thank you so much, Roger.
That's really wonderful. And I would
Thank
like
you.
to share, if you give me opportunity, I would like to share about my son.
Shall I take a
he-
second? Shall I take a second?
I'm sorry, my Zoom is
No. This is very fantastic thing. Nobody has seen in the world. This caricature is the same once upside down. This is the first of its kind in the world.
Can you send a copy of that to us?
yeah.
Sure, I will send. This is the first of its kind in the world.
Okay. If you could send that and post that, I would like to see that up close. That is excellent.
I'll send it, sir.
Okay, thank you. And someone talked about their son. Who was that?
Yeah.
I'm Zen. My son Zen. He has done some research, and he was even doing research on neuroplasticity. And what happened was one of his distant uncle who was suffering from paralysis, because in his research he was keeping hope the first point of exercise in his therapy. He's a young scientist, and he is 21 years, and this he did when he was 16 years old, after his 10th grade, got selected for Google Science Fair, alhamdulillah. And then what he asked first to his uncle, he used to live in a village, so on the phone we interacted first, and then we asked his wife to make him do this exercise, which starts with the hope, like making him believe and having hope and making him believe that though he cannot use his hands, his one hand was paralyzed, so though he cannot use that, we asked him to just close his eyes and just believe that he can use both his hands, and it happened the very first time. With these therapies take months to recover, but with this, because he was having belief that it can work, and we asked him to do that, and his uncle, alhamdulillah, he got a sensation in his hands. His wife told us that he said he was feeling some tickling in his hand, which was paralyzed and no sensation since a long time.
Okay, I have to interrupt you and tell you that that's a fantastic story, and that's exactly what science is now proving, that when we can see the brain in action, they can tell a person, yes, you're making progress. Chris Reeves didn't know he was making progress, but your son had something inside that said, I'm going to try. Nowadays, there are so many imaging machines that can then see in real time that if I think about moving my leg, even if my leg doesn't move, the part of my brain that thinks about it moving does an exercise. So that's what your son was doing, was thinking about it, hoping, but it's real that they're actually helping heal a part or make a part better because of the mental activity. The book that I recommend for a lot of people is The Brain's Way of Healing, because that's not a book that they're trying to sell anything except the facts that science is making progress on understanding how the brain can actually be better just by feeling the emotions of hope. Samin, I think your bandwidth, it's holding out, but are you still good to field any more questions?
I came onto my iPad because my computer has just decided to go on holiday,
Okay.
but I think we're Pradeep is holding
Okay.
up a book. I don't know what it is. Pradeep, is that a book that you want to tell us about?
This is also talks about the brain and the visual effects of the things. What you showed just now, the two-sided of a head, it contains this. The visual, what your mind thinks and what the eye sees is totally different. So it's a very good book. If you want, you can have this. I'm trying to read this, what it is. The visual illusions of life.
Mhm.
It's a very good book.
It looks like a
Okay.
good one.
Yeah.
All right, then I think we're good to go, Roger. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Right.